Hi, everyone. I am meeting with you today from my son's bedroom. Okay, he's likes a lot of the same things that you guys do. You can see the Minecraft poster, and behind me is the Nightmare Before Christmas. So we're in a new location today. I am here today to teach you a little bit about how to use a nonfiction text to ask questions to deepen your understanding. Now, you might be saying to yourselves, "Wait a minute, Mrs. Swartz, didn't we already do that?" Yes, we did. We're doing it a little bit differently, and we're doing it again for a couple of important reasons. Um, the first reason is because today we're going to do it, but this time we have a list of prompts ready for you to get you to think of lots and lots of questions. We didn't have that list for you the other day. Okay, and you'll see in a few minutes how I use my list of ideas to help me come up with more questions. The second reason is that when you did this previously, you did it about the Sharks book. But today, later, after our video, when you do this, you're going to actually be doing it about the animal that you picked last week on Epic. Okay, so this will get you started thinking more deeply about that animal so that you can do the animal report that's coming up. Okay, we'll be starting our research on that over the next, not this week, probably early next week. And we're preparing you so that you can really get a lot of good information for that. Okay, so anyway, today we're just going to focus on two parts. We're going to focus on the physical characteristics section and the habitat section. Okay, those are our two sections. Physical characteristics, which is just a reminder, that's how your animal looks. And then habitat, which is where your animal lives. Okay, so these are our two sections that we'll be focusing on today. Tomorrow, we'll be focusing on the food that the animal eats, and we'll be focusing on some of the behaviors. Okay, now the first thing I'm going to do is show you, I'm going to go into present mode and show you the chart that we made up that's going to be helping you. Okay, so I will go into present mode. Okay. And this is, I'll wait a second. Okay. And this is the chart about physical description or physical characteristics, they mean the same thing, that you can use to help you get ideas for questions that you have about your animal. And then later on, you can use those questions and try to find the answers to them to help you get a lot of research on your animal. We're calling this look fors because these are things that you can look for about your animal. Okay, so as I think about it, I am going to be thinking about these topics, these things that I can think about in terms of the Sharks book that I read the other day. I may show the Sharks book again if I need to. So I'll be doing that. Okay, now let's see. Okay, so the first topic, the first idea, if you are looking for things to add to about your animal, that one of the things you can think about is that animal, cold-blooded or warm-blooded? Okay, so I'm going to think back to my shark book, and it actually did not say in my shark book if my animal was warm-blooded or cold-blooded. So I think I can actually ask a good question about that. And the place I'm going to write down my question is right here on this chart. You will be doing your work on one very similar to this. Now, I have on here my question from the other day. How much do sharks weigh and how long are they? And I have that in blue just to show that that's an old question. But now I'm going to add a question on here about whether or not they are warm-blooded or cold-blooded. So my question I'm going to type now is, let me get that in a different color. I think I would like to get that in black. just to make it look different. Okay. And it's still in blue, so let's get that in black. There we go. Are sharks warm-blooded or cold-blooded? Now, my prediction is going to be that they are cold-blooded, but I'm really not sure because I know whales are warm-blooded, and I actually think dolphins are too. So maybe sharks are warm-blooded. I don't know. That answer was not in the sharks book that I read. So now when I do some further research, that's something I'm really going to look for. Are sharks warm-blooded or cold-blooded? And while I'm at it, I might also look for what exactly those words mean, because maybe my reader doesn't know what warm-blooded and cold-blooded means. So that's something else I could add. In fact, I'll put that on so I don't forget. What does warm and cold-blooded mean? Wow, see how easy it is to come up with questions? I only got to the first part of my chart and I already have a question. So as you're reading through these ideas on the physical description page, you should be thinking like I am about what questions do I have? How can I make a question about that applies to my animal? Now, please know, you don't have to do everything on this page, okay? Because that would take you a really long time. We just want you to get some questions, and I'll talk a little more detail at the end about exactly how many we want. Also, some of these won't even apply to your animal. For example, I see feathers here. Well, shark, I know, doesn't have feathers, okay? So keep that in mind too, that not everything on this chart will apply to your animal, okay? Now, let's see. So that was one question. Now I'm going to look through my chart and see if I can find some other ideas for questions I have. Let's see. Skin. Well, I know skin was in my book. Okay. Fur. I know sharks don't have fur. Scales. Well, I'm wondering, do sharks have scales? But I know from what I read in my book that they have skin. I remember there was a section on that, and I could look back at my book if I needed to. So I'm not too worried about that. Okay, here's some other areas: feathers, cartilage. I know I talked about cartilage already. Maybe I have a question about that, but there's actually another one lower I think I'm going to get into further on our page. Shell, hair, wool. So I'm just reading through these words now, so you know all the different types of things that you can look for information on to get questions about. Male, female, babies, young size, weight, height, length. Okay, again, a lot of these maybe don't apply to your animal, but we're getting things here that could apply to lots of different animals. So you kind of have to look through and see. Beak, paws, snout, wings. Ooh, snout. I have a question about the snout. I remember from our book, and I'll actually turn back for this one. I remember from our epic text, which I have right here, that there was a picture, let's see if I can find it, of a hammerhead shark, right? And it said that right here, hammerhead shark. And I think this snout is super interesting. I mean, that's really different looking. So I am wondering if when I'm going to go back to my organizer, and I think I'm going to ask the question, and let me just get to where I can hit return. And I think I'm going to add another question. Do other types of sharks have very unique means like different or interesting, unique snouts like the hammerhead? So that's a question I can ask. So as I do my research later on, okay, later this week and next week, I can keep my eyes open for sharks that have very interesting snouts, like the hammerhead shark. Let's see. So I'm going to go back to my list here, and I'm going to look for other things I might have a question about. I'm going to read through all of them just so you know all the words in case any of the words are hard for you. Wings, tongue, camouflage, membrane, horns, claws, gills, thumbs, eyes. And one thing I could think about with the eyes is the number of eyes. Although I could do any question I have about eyes. Pouch. Okay, I know some animals have pouches like kangaroos and koalas. Wingspan. That means how wide the animal is, or in this case, the flying bird or whatever it might be, from one end to the other. Antenna, flippers, fangs, webbed feet, talons, legs, mane, blowhole, blubber. Ooh, I think I can ask a question about blubber. I know that whales have a lot of blubber that gives them their large size and weight. I wonder if sharks have blubber too. So I'm going to do, oh, I'm in the wrong document. So I am going to hit return here, and I'm going to do another question. Let's just get to the spot here that I need. Do sharks have blubber like whales? I mean, I think they must have some type of, there must be a name for what their body is, but I wonder if it's called blubber and if it's like the blubber on a whale. So I'll try to find out that answer as I keep working on my assignment. Tusk, tail, fins, ears, stinger, lungs, and arms. Okay, so that's our page about physical characteristics or physical description. You could call it either one. And I was able to come up with 3 questions. I probably could have done more because I love this topic and I love writing, but I'm going to stick with 3 for now, just so we can move on. Okay. Now I'm going to go down to my next section on habitat. Now, habitat. Remember, habitat is where the animal lives, okay? And the questions I had last time were, do sharks appear more often in some oceans as compared to others? That was my question, okay? I'm just going to put that on one line. And now I'm going to go to my habitat chart in a moment, and I am going to see what kind of questions I can think of that have to do with where the shark lives. Okay, so I'm going to go to a different chart now. This is a chart, look fors about habitat, okay? Remember, you don't have to do every single thing on here. That would be a really long report. This is to give you ideas of the type of questions you can ask to help you get more information about your animal. So habitat, you might want information about how it's the place that provides food, water, and space to live to fit the animal. Habitat also, you can think about if the animal lives close to others, or sometimes they are solitary, they live more apart. And if they protect their own territory, some animals do that, right? Because that's where they live. So do they try to protect where they live? And if they do try to protect their own territory, if they do try to protect their habitat, what kind of an area is that? Is it a large area they try to protect, or is it just where they're immediately staying, their den or whatever it might be? And also, something important to note is when we talk about habitat, we're also interested in that animal's location in the world, okay? For example, pandas are only located in one small area in China. So that's something to note too, okay? That is related to habitat. You could think, and when you're thinking about the location, you could think about the region, okay? There's a mountain range in China where pandas live, a specific, very small area. If it's something, or it might have to do with, now obviously this would be with a different animal, the state that the animals, or states that they might be more commonly found in, the country or countries that the animal is found in, the continent, or if it lives in the ocean, like our lovely friend the shark. And if it does live in the ocean, you might want to think about what type of ocean that animal lives in. So, for example, that actually leads me to a question I have. Well, actually, that leads me to our last question. I still have that question. Do sharks appear more often in some oceans as compared to others? So that kind of has to do with location because I want to know kind of which sharks they are more prevalent in, where I'm going to see them more. Um, Now, let's see if I can come up with some more questions about the habitat that sharks live in. Okay, so I'm going to keep reading through these. Now let's see. We can come up with questions that have to do with the place they live in. So we kind of already know that. We know that sharks live in the ocean, but I'll still read these just so you know what all the words are in case they're hard. We have the jungle, the woods, the ocean, pond, tundra, which is like the frozen area up in like the North Pole area, okay? So a suburban area. You might have animals like squirrels and things like that that could live there. Rainforest, the plains, which is like the grasslands that are located. Sometimes there's plains here in North America where there's a lot of grass. And sometimes there's plains that are also considered to be part of like the African plain that are also grassy areas, but not a lot of trees. So that's what we mean by plains. River, if the animal lives underground, a lot of insects live underground, or they might burrow holes, like in our example that we did the other day, right? If the animal lives in an urban area, the forest, grasslands, trees, ice, savanna, or rural areas. Okay, and again, a savanna, in case you don't know what that is like a very dry area. A lot of times they appear in Africa, okay? And ice is similar to a tundra, but it's even colder and icier than the tundra. So that's a little bit of the difference between that. By the way, if you don't know what any of these words mean, this is kind of a nice thing to think about if you're doing like a word bank or a glossary or a little section for your words. That might be something to think about putting there. Okay. Okay, so we'll move on in a moment. Okay. So now, when you think about your animal and where it lives, you need to think about the type of a place it lives in, like one of these. But you also want to get as specific as you're able to about exactly where the home is, where it makes its home. So, for example, like a bear might live in a forest, but within that forest, they have a den, which is even more specific as to where they live. So you want to try to get as much information as you can: the world location, the type of a place, the type of a habitat, and then the specific home. Okay. So when you think about that, you might want to ask questions about if they live in a den, if they live in a nest made of twigs and leaves, a stream, hives, a web, under rocks, ice and snow, a pond, open land, trees, bushes, a swamp, or a burrow. Okay. Now, as I read through these, I just came up with another idea for a question about sharks. I see this part under rocks, okay? This makes me think, does a shark tend to live and swim more towards the ocean floor near the rocks? Or do they go higher in the ocean to where they're closer to the surface? So I'm going to type that for my next question. Do sharks live closer to the ocean floor, or do they live and swim? I guess both of these would be live and swim, right? Live and swim closer to the ocean surface. And it may not be one or the other. It might be both. Maybe there's times that they're near the ocean floor and times that they're closer to the surface. But again, now that I've asked that question, I know to look for that as I'm doing my research. And then I have what I'm looking at my bottom part, and this is another important thing you could get in when we talk about habitat, the way that they live, or the name of the group they might live in. Some animals travel in groups, okay, and those groups could have different names. Or some live very solitary lives. So, and in fact, here's the word solitary. So your animal might be a solitary animal, which as I'm thinking about sharks, I think sharks are kind of solitary animals, but I don't really know that. So that's actually going to be another question I have. Are sharks solitary creatures, or do they live in groups? I mean, I think sharks are kind of solitary, but again, I'm not sure. I'm looking to find that out. And if they are solitary, what about when they first have their babies? Are they solitary then? I mean, they have their little babies. I don't know. Hopefully, now that I've asked these questions, I can find them out as I do my research. These are some other names of groups that your animal might fall into. Okay, for example, herd, like we talk about that a lot of times when it's land animals, like a herd of sheep or a herd of elephants. A school, like a school of fish. Ambush and stampede, those are words that have to do with when a large group of animals, like a herd, is rushing towards you at once. So those might be some words to think about when you think about what they do with their group. Family, colony, a lot of insects live in colonies. Swarm, again, that's a lot of times that's an insect word. They could live in a group. Or a pride. I believe pride is more a lot of land animals, like perhaps lions, but I'm not 100% sure on that. If I were researching, I would look into that. Flock, that often has to do with birds. A pod, a pack, okay? A lot of times I know wolves live in packs, okay? A shiver or a partner, if they have one partner. Again, your animal, the group that your animal lives in, if they're in a group, might have one of these names. So you can check that out and research that. Okay, so far I've got 2 questions about the habitat of sharks. Now, there's one more thing kind of related to habitat that I want to go over with you today. Habitat can be about all these things, where their location in the world, the place they live, what their home is like, and how they travel with the animals that are in their home with them, how they move around from home to home. But there is one more thing to notice. When we write about habitat and we think about questions we have, we can also think about the climate that they live in, okay? The climate is kind of like what the weather conditions are on a regular basis. Doesn't mean just one rainstorm, but is it rainy there all the time? Okay, that's what we're talking about when we say climate. So let me just try to get this chart moved over a little bit. Okay, and I'm having a little difficulty here, so bear with me. Here we go. Okay, so we can think about the temperature in the habitat. If it is, and when we do think about that temperature, we think about, is it warm or is it cold there? And then when we think about that temperature, we also want to say, a lot of times it won't be one temperature, it'll be a range, right? Because it's never just one temperature in a spot. So we can say what those degrees are, and we want to indicate if that's in Fahrenheit or Celsius. So, for example, in our climate, right, the temperature can range from, I would say an average temperature in, say, the summertime could be from 75 degrees Celsius to 95 degrees Fahrenheit, 75 degrees Fahrenheit to 95 degrees Fahrenheit. If we talked about the temperature for all the time for the whole year, well, we could go from not below zero, that would be Celsius. In Fahrenheit, we could go from maybe We can go to as low as single digit degrees, like, 3 or 4 degrees Fahrenheit, all the way up to, I mean, there have been days it's 100 degrees outside. Okay. So there, again, that would be in Fahrenheit. So you can think about the range of temperatures where that animal might live. Now, this makes me think about a question for sharks. It makes me wonder. So, I have another question now. Do sharks like to live in areas in oceans where the water is warmer or colder? Right? So, I am going to add that question. Do sharks like water that is warmer or colder? So hopefully, as I continue doing my research, I can find that answer. Now, some other things you can think about when you think about the climate, the weather area, the type of common weather in that area is proximity. Proximity means how close that habitat is to the equator. Now, I actually happen to have a globe not too far away. I just thought of that as I was looking at this, so please excuse me for a moment. And bear with me. I actually have, okay, I have a globe right here. So let me come back in front of the computer. And I hope you can see this okay. This is a globe, and in the middle of the globe, there is a line. Now, it's drawn on the globe. In real life, it's an imaginary line, but that people use to refer to the middle of the earth going across. That is the equator, okay? So you can think if that animal lives near the equator, where it tends to be warmer, or farther away from the equator, where it tends to be colder. You can also think about the type of seasons, okay? If that habitat has 4 seasons, 3 seasons, 2 seasons, or 1 season, okay, because there are variations in seasons around the world. And if it's rainy or dry there, okay, you can think about how often it rains, or if it gets the weather, if it gets windy, or if there's a lot of sunshine. And these are some words to think about when you're thinking about the weather in that habitat. Is it sunny? Is it cloudy? Is it hot? Dry, rainy, damp, dark, mild, snowy, warm, humid, which means it's not raining, but there's a lot of moisture in the air, windy, cold, icy, or extreme day or night. In parts of the world that are far away from the equator, at certain points in the year, there can be a lot of daylight or there can be a lot of darkness. Okay. Now, again, remember, some of these ideas won't apply to your animal. I actually don't see too much here that would apply to the shark because it's in the ocean, and that is okay. All right. Not every idea on these charts will apply to every animal. And then something else you can think about is the effects on an animal. Animals adapt or change to survive in the climate that they live. So, for example, some animals have developed, very thick coats of fur for climates that are colder. Okay, that would be a way that animals have adapted over thousands and thousands of years. Okay, so that you can think about that also when you're asking questions about your animal. Now, so what I've done, so now that I've looked at my posters, which by the way, will also be on your daily learning document, so you will have access to these, okay? Now that I've looked at my posters, my list of look fors, I can think about what questions I have, which I've actually already done. Okay, so as you read these, you should be looking through them and thinking of questions that you can add just like I did. Now, I came up with 3 questions for each of these. Okay, we want you to what we are asking you to do is have at least 1 question for each of these. But remember, the more questions you have, the more ideas you have to do for your research when you get to working on your actual animal. So if you can come up with more than one for each of these, for physical characteristics and habitat, please do, okay? Because it will only help you in the end. Remember, well, let me backtrack a little. You're going to get a paper, okay, and it'll be in your Google Classroom that looks very similar to mine. Yours will be blank and it looks like this, okay? And you're going to use this to put your questions on. And the directions are up here, okay? You are going to think deeply. I'll read it. You are going to think deeply about your animal. Think about, let me zoom out a little. That might make it easier to read it. There we go. I'm at 90%. Think about questions that you have about your animal, the one that you chose last week that were not in your epic text. Okay, we want to try to get new questions to get you to dig a little deeper. Type them below or write them on another piece of paper. Please think of at least one question for the physical characteristics category and one question for the habitat category. We encourage you to try to think of more than one, as this will help you on what to research in our upcoming research lessons. Now, this part's important. Please do not go on yet to the other categories of eating habits and on this next page, behavior, okay? We're going to talk more about that for our lesson tomorrow. And one more important thing that says here on the bottom, please do not submit this, okay? We're going to use this same document again for our lesson tomorrow. So you'll type your physical characteristics and habitat questions today, and then tomorrow, after we talk about how to do eating habits and behavior, you'll put those questions over here for tomorrow's lesson. So you want to hold on to this document on your computer so that you can add to your questions tomorrow. Okay, so that's all I have today. It was lots of fun talking to you guys. And just one last thing, I want to reiterate that this is about your animal that you picked the book for. It's not about sharks, okay? Sharks was my example. You are doing this with your own animal. Okay, have a great day, guys. Bye. Okay. And I'm just having trouble stopping my recording, so bear with me. And I hope I've stopped my recording, but I don't think I have. Here we go. Okay.